Hello and welcome to this video from Caboodle Textiles on how to sew stretch fabrics using a sewing machine. This video is going to cover the basic settings that you might need to change when using stretch fabrics. We do assume that you have already sewn some basic non-stretch items prior to starting this. The first thing to look at is your tension, which is likely to need to be a lot lower with stretch fabrics. Cotton jersey on my machine tends to need a tension of 2 to 2.5, but you will need to play with your machine to see which it likes best. Next up is your needle choice. You'll want to use a needle suitable for stretch fabrics such as ballpoint or jersey. The thickness of your needle, so measured in 70, 80 or 90, will depend on the thickness of your fabric. So lighter fabrics such as Fico's or bamboo jersey will need 70, whereas heavy fabrics like alpine fleece might need a size 100. My machine is happy using a standard foot with my stretch fabrics, but many machines prefer a walking foot, and these can be easily gotten from your local sewing machine dealer or online. You can also use an overcasting foot with an overcasting stitch, which gives an appearance similar to overlocking and is what I used to use before I got an overlocker. Assuming you're using a standard foot, the majority of people use a narrow zigzag, which looks like a lightning bolt like this one, a wider zigzag like this one, or my personal favourite, the triple stretch stitch, which is incredibly strong and provides very even, strong stitches even through cuffs or adding ribbing. So to demonstrate sewing with stretch fabric, I have got 2 pieces of cotton lycra that I have put together right sides together. I use clips rather than pins because I find then I don't distort where the fabric needs to be. You'll need to check what the seam allowance is for the pattern that you're using. I sew a lot of Made by Jack's Mum, and that uses a 6mm seam allowance. With my machine, I can use an ordinary foot unless it is particularly thick fabric. I've put it on a lower tension, so I'm using a number 2. And for this demonstration, I'm using a contrasting thread colour, but obviously normally you would use something that coordinates with your fabric. I'm using the stretch stitch, the triple stretch stitch. That's a really great strong stitch and will work for cuffs as well as putting the fabric together. The only thing you need to be aware of is it's really difficult to unpick. So you need to be absolutely sure you're sewing the right things together unless you want to spend half an hour with your unpicker. Don't start too near the edge of your fabric as you'll find it gets eaten behind. I'm just going to sew my first seam. As you can see, that's with a contrasting thread. When you turn the other side, it's really strong. It's not going to come apart easily. Importantly, that seam stretches really well, so it isn't going to get torn apart with movement or when you're wearing the garment. On the reverse side, it should look perfect too. Mine's looking a little bit loose, so this material obviously needs a slightly higher tension. Practice, practice, practice on scraps before you get your good fabric out and start your garment. With the triple stretch stitch, you don't need to do too many reversing stitches, because you'll find that there's 3 on top of each other regardless. If you're not attaching cuffs and you need to hem, on a sewing machine you can use a twin needle. As you can see, it's still got a single shank, so it goes in the exact same place as your normal needle would. You can then use your manual to work out how to thread it specifically for your sewing machine, and every sewing machine can use a twin needle, even if a twin needle hasn't been originally provided. You then just sew a standard straight stitch. Most people would use a walking foot, but you can use a standard foot if your machine will cope. It will make this effect, so this is on a sleeve cuff, and that will provide a stretchy seam because there's a single thread coming through the bobbin and it wraps round each of the threads coming from the twin needle in order to make a stretchy seam. When you're first learning, you may want to use hem tape in order to stick your seam and iron it so that it doesn't move while you're sewing.